and welcome. You're watching Tigray Television English program service coming to you live from Mala. Commander-in-Chief of the Tigray Defense Forces, General Taddese Orada, says 65% of his forces have disengaged from battle front lines. In a media briefing this afternoon, the general says complete disengagement will take place simultaneously with the mitigation of the threats posed on the peace process. For a report by Abel Zagabu, Miron Yamana.
Commander-in-Chief of the Tigray Defense Forces, General Taddese Orada, gave a media briefing earlier today. In his briefing, the general stated that 65% of Tigrayan fighters have disengaged from battle front lines.
The disengagement process is all about withdrawing our forces from the front lines, and it is going good. We have huge numbers of forces. 65% of them have gone under this process. They withdrew on foot and vehicles. Just because of the presence of spoilers and the trouble they're creating, we have left some elements of our forces on the front lines. But even in these areas, we have decreased the amount of forces engaging. When these threats are taken care of, we'll be disengaging completely. We committed ourselves to implement the agreement.
The Commander-in-Chief also highlighted that the atrocities are being committed by Eritrean and Amhara forces and called on the Ethiopian National Defense Forces to ensure their withdrawal for these ongoing crimes to stop.
It is Ethiopian forces' responsibility to withdraw Eritrean forces and Amhara regional forces. Both forces are committing horrific crimes on our people. The Ethiopian forces have also the responsibility to stop these ongoing atrocities. We expect the Ethiopian forces will fulfill their responsibilities.
The general also said that no monitoring mechanism has yet been put in place, but his forces are disengaging just because they're committed to the peace deal signed.
We've done things we've done because we are committed to the agreement we signed. Observers and other monitoring mechanisms mentioned in the agreement have not yet entered, but we have to implement the agreement.
Last week, Tigray Military Command said that the Tigrayan forces are disengaging from multiple front lines, such as Nevelet, Maiqanetal, Charchar, Ber Tikhlai, Hegum, Berda, Zalambessa, and Abergele.
Asked about the recent meeting between high military officials from both sides, the Commander-in-Chief says the meeting on disarmament will take the peace process one step forward. General Taddese noted disarmament will be carried out considering the safety and security of the people of Tigray. Let's take a look.
The committee will prepare a plan of disarmament and execution plan. The plan will be all about disarmament of light weapons. The plan will not be ratified there though. This disarmament is not something that will be discussed exclusively. The safety and security of the people of Tigray will be taken under consideration. I don't have information when will that end, but the meeting has taken the implementation process one step forward. We were meeting in abroad. Now that we started meeting here, it is good. We will see the rest when they bring the report.
WHO says the cessation of hostilities signed has not brought unfettered humanitarian access into Tigray. It says there is no any access in parts of Tigray controlled by Eritrean forces. Appreciating the peace deal, Director of WHO Director Dr. Tedros Adhanom says reports of civilians massacres are coming every day, which he said will threat the ongoing peace process. Let's take a look.
We welcome peace. The agreement is important, and I hope all parties will continue to commit to peace. And at the same time, the agreement should be implemented in full. And as Mike said, of course, there are some food aid and medicine being delivered, but unfettered access is what we expect. Because the need is massive. And the second part is the services, banking services, because 6 million people still are not having access to their bank accounts and starving as a result. And the third part is the ongoing massacre by Eritrean forces in the areas they occupied. And massacring civilians, reports coming every day, and that could undermine the peace process. Not only massacring civilians, but looting, destroying infrastructure, and all sorts of activities that could really undermine the peace process. But again, I repeat, the only solution to this conflict is through political dialogue that's happening now and through peaceful settlement. We encourage that, but civilians should be at the center. Even when there is conflict, even in the middle of war, food aid and medical supplies should be delivered, and it should not be even a condition, and should not be attached with the political or military dialogue which is happening. It should be unconditional and unfettered.
The announcement of the negotiations on ceasefires and peace process is obviously welcome. The Director General has always said that we need peace to have health. We need health to have peace. So any cessation of hostilities that allows us to address the health concerns and needs of the population must always be welcomed. But that peace process has not yet resulted in the kinds of full access, unfettered access, and in the massive scale-up of medical and health assistance that the people of Tigray need. There are issues in Tigray, particularly with militias in the west who control parts of the territory. There are still significant parts of the country that are occupied by Eritrean forces for which there is no access, and very disturbing reports emerging around the experiences of the people there. There are areas, certainly in Tigray now, in which the Ethiopian Defence Forces are, but other areas in which other Tigrayan forces are. So it's a very mixed bag, and certainly we are seeing some increase in access in terms of getting some of our staff in. We've had a small allocation of fuel from that will allow us to do some operations, and we're starting to see a small trickle, and I would say it's a trickle. We have a tiny percentage of the need that's there potentially we can meet. There are some areas from which there is access for assessment teams, but as regards bringing back online the health system, as regards resupplying primary healthcare and secondary healthcare facilities with essential medical equipment, as regards paying health staff, as regards communicating and being able to effectively use their banking system, which is still completely offline. So without mobile communications, without a banking system, it's horrific for the people there not to have that. So many years in, not to have access to your own money, not to have access to communications with loved ones. But it is critical in an emergency operation to have those systems. So much of the success of humanitarian response depends on logistics, depends on communication, depends on banking systems. If they don't exist, you don't have the means. But the people in Tigray are desperate. They've been years now without access to proper healthcare, without access to proper nutrition. And they need our help now, not next week, not next month. They need it now. And I still, personally and my team, do not see evidence of unfettered access to the people in need in Tigray. That needs to change.
On October 26, Eritrean forces massacred 63 civilians, including 10 children, in the vicinity of Gela in Central Zone. 2 siblings have been able to escape this horrific massacre and now getting treatment at Eider Comprehensive Specialist Hospital. They tell us that Eritrean soldiers gathered civilians, including children, and mercilessly killed more than 63. Saron Zagay reports.
On October 26, a massacre of more than 63 civilians has been committed on the district of Gela in central Tigray. Eritrean forces gathered residents of the area, including children whose age ranged from 6 months to 5 years old, at the vicinity of Adijaganu, and indiscriminately shot and killed dozens. 12-year-old Bariha Tesfai and her brother Binyam Tesfai, 9-year-old, survived this brutal massacre and are now getting treatment in Eider Comprehensive Specialized Hospital. They were both on the fields looking after their cattle when Eritrean soldiers approached them. They say they started running when the soldiers opened fire at them.
We were just sitting, looking after our cattle. Then Eritrean soldiers started firing at me, and I ran. They shot me on my leg. Both of my friends ran away. I don't know if they survived or got shot. Then the soldiers started shouting at each other, saying, "Come back here, she's down."
I was looking after our cattle. Then the Eritrean soldiers started shooting at us. I left my cattle there and ran away. I was there with 2 others. When we arrived at the plateau, we slept face down on the field. Then they shot at us. My friend was hit on his arm and leg. I was hit on my arms as well.
Their suffering didn't end there. Bariha spent a day on the spot that she was shot at. On the next day, the soldiers came back again and shot her on the face.
An Eritrean soldier told me to sleep face down, and I did. He commanded another soldier to shoot me on the temple. I tried to move, so he shot me on my mouth instead. After all of that, they thought I was dead, and they left. While they were leaving, they were stepping on me.
To make matters worse, Bariha and her brother spent days on the wilderness, moving in and out of consciousness. When Bariha finally gained full consciousness, she counted more than 53 dead bodies of residents of her vicinity, of which 2 belonged to her mother and her older sister.
I spent 3 days sleeping under a tree. Then a man named Solomon came and I asked him to help me. He picked me up and carried me away from that area. Many bodies were lying there. While Solomon was carrying me on his back, I counted around 53 bodies. Solomon's wife and son were also killed, and their bodies were lying there. I also saw a crying baby, whose parents were dead. I also saw my mother and older sister lying there. They killed them. I saw them when they were picking me up from where I was lying.
Lakatit Asartahada Primary Hospital in Maqala struggles to provide care for its patients amidst lack of medical supplies and medication in the region. The hospital opened its doors a year before the start of the war on Tigray, and now it is near collapsing. Chronic illness patients are now exposed to different kinds of complication and death due to lack of medical supplies. Our reporter Aragawi Gabramkal has the details.
Just 3 years into its opening, Yekatit 11 Hospital has no longer able to provide care for many patients that visited it every day. Lakatit 11 Primary Hospital is just one of the many hospitals in Tigray that are no longer able to provide essential care for their patients due to the depletion of medical supplies. The hospital currently has 250 chronic illness patients under its care, to which it used to provide not only medicine but routine checkups for. Now, medical director of the hospital, Dr. Idris Abdu, says many of the patients remain in critical conditions as the hospital struggles to help its patients.
We have around 250 chronic illness patients at the hospital. We don't only use it to provide medicine for our patients, but we also use it to conduct baseline examinations for them. However, we are unable to run such tests as our laboratory is depleted of essential medical supplies. Our patients also couldn't afford to pay for their laboratory tests at private hospitals due to the economic crisis caused by the current situation. So we are not able to help our patients.
Pregnant mothers are also being forced to give birth at home, added the doctor. He says termination of ambulance services due to lack of fuel and telecommunication blackout are main factors.
Ambulance service almost
After the incident, the ambulance service was completely terminated, and as a result, women were forced to give birth at home, as they have no access to telecommunication and no chance for getting an ambulance service. We are also run out of reagents, so we are no longer providing laboratory tests for malaria, hepatitis, VDRL, and HIV, which are critical tests especially for pregnant women.
Dr. Idris also says emergency care at the hospital has also been compromised. Asthma patients seeking immediate care and diabetic patients in need of insulin are simply being turned back.
Last week, a child whose blood sugar increased was coming here to get help, but I couldn't be able to help him as the hospital is run out of insulin, which is helpful to lower the level of blood sugar. We had also hypoglycemic patients, but we couldn't be able to help him as we don't have glucose 40%.
A month into a peace agreement that promised unfettered humanitarian aid, the amount of aid that has entered to Tigray since is nowhere near that demand.
In related news, 165 children that have been under the follow-up of Yekatit Sertahada Primary Hospital have terminated their therapeutic feeding due to shortage of essential supplies. Again, Arga government reports.
Malnutrition among children has been one of the major problems in Tigray since the start of the 2 years gruesome war. As a result, millions of children in Tigray are now in dire need of therapeutic feeding, as they are suffering from severe acute malnutrition. Faraweni Gabrahewat, a pediatric specialist at Yekatit 11 Primary Hospital, says the hospital is forced to terminate its therapeutic feeding for 165 children due to lack of supplies.
Currently, we have 165 children under follow-up of therapeutic feeding program, but the program is terminated now due to the war. The program is frequently interrupted as we only get small portion of the supplies we need whenever aid is trickling in 2 or 3 months. We are only able to feed some of the children for 3 to 5 days if we get some.
According to Froeni Gabrahewat, the children are exposed to different illnesses as they have already a compromised immune system.
complicated نخوني يخد مالتي زجدد نخلي يوم زكالو مخنياتو زيهم immunocompromised يوم.
The disease becomes complicated day to day as the children are already immune compromised, so the children are exposed to different opportunistic diseases like diarrhea, pneumonia, and conjunctivitis.
Froeni also says the hospital is not getting any aid yet, even after a month of the signed peace deal.
هزيد حرتي سلام سمعنت مستفرمة بدحري زلو كم هوسبيتالنا من مزرخبنا ينقر يلن.
After the signing of the peace deal, our hospital hasn't got any aid from anyone. On the contrary, we are losing patients due to the lack of medical supplies. This month alone, we have lost 1 child from malnutrition.
Froeni tells that health professionals at the hospital are suffering from psychological traumas as they couldn't able to help their patients due to lack of medical supplies.
Regardless of our knowledge or ability to help our patients, it is very painful to lose a child due to lack of medical supplies. And such kinds of incidents are creating a psychological trauma among the health professionals. On top of this, there is an economic hardship that our staff are enduring, as they are working without any salary for around 18 months now. We have also lost our staff member here in this hospital from lack of food and medicine.
Froeni calls for immediate opening of all corridors to Tigray, so children in Tigray could get what they are dearly in need.
Peace is what we have been looking forward to, as no one benefits from hatred or war. But what I expected after the signing of the peace deal is opening of all corridors into Tigray. It has been a month since the peace deal was signed, but nothing has changed yet. I wish things to return to normal and basic services resume so children in Tigray could get what they need just like any other child in the world.
That's it for this edition. Bye for now.